The following is a Spirit Street production. You've discovered your link to the Powercat Podcast, presented by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. It's the Powercat Podcast. And now, let's go to the Spirit Street Studios. Here's your host, Go Powercat publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast. This will be your normal Tuesday edition as we go podcast every day of the week. A lot of audio is going to be shared on GoPowercat.com this fall, this sports season. And this is what we will now call our Sources Podcast. We talk to the people and we share with you what they say. We'll have guests on this podcast as we advance down the road a little bit, but today we're going to stick with audio from coach press conferences. And on Monday, we got to speak with the defensive coaches. That's the four position coaches and not defense coordinator Scotty Hazelton, who will be up on Friday with the media. And then in the second half of this podcast, we'll pull out some of the good quotes from Chris Klieman at his Tuesday press conference, as that will be his normal day for press conferences when he meets with the media throughout the season. The big news coming out of Monday was it looks like they're set on a nickelback at Kansas State. Now, Jerron McPherson, a junior college transfer out of Baser, Kansas, that has really kind of come on strong now that he's healthy and ready to go in fall practice. And according to Joe Klanderman, the safeties coach, the nickelback spot probably belongs to McPherson, and let's take a dive into that topic. But first, he's going to talk about his safeties and where McPherson fits in.
Right now, it's Denzel Goolsby, Wayne Jones, and Jerron McPherson as the nickel. But, I mean, it's interchangeable parts by and large. I mean, you'll see John Alexander in there with that group a little bit. You're going to see John Durham in there with that group a little bit. You may even see Ross Elder in there. So those would be the top six in my mind right now.
Then he delved into Jerron McPherson more specifically with why he's earned that spot.
He's a really good player in man technique, which at our nickel spot with what we do, that's something that's going to be very important. And really slippery blitzer, really understands what we're doing, great communicator, I mean, total package.
Good stuff from Joe Klanderman there. And Van Malone also had something to say about Jerron McPherson, kind of a hybrid player, fits that nickelback spot pretty well for Kansas State. And, of course, Van Malone coaches the cornerbacks.
He's done a great job. When we had the opportunity to get him back healthy, that was one of the positions that we talked as a staff about, getting him in there to be able to play because of his ability to be able to play man, and then his ability to be able to fit into the box and tackle. He provides just what Walt provided at that position.
And, of course, he's talking about Walter Neal there, the guy who was nickelback for most of last season under Bill Snyder, now is one of the starting cornerbacks. We'll get a little bit more from Coach Malone on Walt in just a bit. But let's go back to the safety spot, where that spot, of course, is led by Denzel Goolsby. And who doesn't love Denzel? He was out much this spring also with an injury, but now he is back. He is focused, and he's kind of a quiet leader for this bunch.
He's just a real calming force, Denzel is. I mean, he's been in the fight before, and that's something that I worry about with Wayne Jones and John Alexander. Those guys haven't been and played out there in front of 53,000, and they're going to respond fine. I have no doubt in my mind. But Denzel has been in that, and so just the way he takes care of his body, the way he goes about his business, the way he prepares his week, of preparation, and just his routine is helping those guys immensely.
But one of the stars of this year's fall camp in terms of defensive backs has been a guy who really didn't get much opportunity last year. Probably was good enough to play on a regular basis for Kansas State as a true freshman, and his name is Wayne Jones. And he sets a tone on that defensive backfield as the other safety, more of the strong safety, as Goolsby kind of plays more of the free, but they're interchangeable. Wayne Jones is a playmaker for Kansas State, and he will be for a very long time.
Well, he's got great, short area quickness. Just talking physical, from a physical standpoint, great short area quickness, great snap to his body, I guess, for lack of a better thing. He does some of the run fit stuff really well. What really is putting him ahead of everybody else is just his knowledge of what we're doing and his ability to communicate what we're doing and his ability to get everybody on the same page. I bet if you asked anybody that's on the field, who do you look to on defense to get things going, I bet to a man they'd all say Wayne Jones.
But, of course, Walter Neal has made a lot of this possible with moving around Jerron McPherson, and Walt was the nickelback a season ago, as I mentioned. He is now opposite A.J. Parker as the starting corners, and there's a reason why Walt has moved into that role. Here's Van Malone.
It's a good situation, just like I've talked before, and Coach Hazelton and I have gone round and round as to what is the best position for Walt to be able to help us the most. And it's been corner, but there'll be some packages in the future where we'll move him inside, and then that'll give the opportunity for other guys to be able to play at corner. I think having great depth at that position is vital, especially in this league.
And that depth is allowing Van Malone to kind of parse up the leadership on the back end, a leadership that's mostly coming by example.
We're leading by a group right now. AJ, of course, is a guy who goes about his business. He's not a talking guy, He really leads by example. So in that way, he does. Kevion McGee is a guy. He's more vocal, right? Lance Robinson's a little bit more vocal. Lance is a young guy, but he's played a lot, and he's spirited and enthusiastic. So there's a few guys in that room who do a good job at the appropriate time of stepping out and leading, and I like it that way. I like it that way.
It's very interesting because this is the first time that Kansas State fans are going through a season or a preseason with two defensive back coaches. It's always been a practice in the past that one guy took all 4 or 5 positions, and honestly, it's a little bit overwhelming. It's what Joe Klanderman did last year or previous years at North Dakota State. Well, now that he's come into the Big 12 with all these passing offenses, Coach Klieman has elected to hire 2 defensive back coaches, and I think it's probably essential for success against these passing offenses. Klanderman coaches the safeties. Van Malone coaches the corners, but it is all one secondary, and Joe Klanderman talked about the chemistry that's going on in the back end of the defense.
It's awesome. Great group of guys. We grind our butts off in there, and we're the quarterbacks of what's going on back there. Every piece of communication comes through us, and so they really have to have a global understanding of what we're doing, and they love it. They eat it up. I've been around some people that just they love to play, but they don't love to prepare. These guys love to prepare, and that's fun for me as a coach.
Between you and Dan, is this going better than you could have ever anticipated, starting from ground zero?
Yeah, it just allows you to be much more detailed with everybody. At North Dakota State, I coached all 4, and every minute you spend coaching the corners, you're not coaching the safeties on something. And me and Van are on the same page with a lot of the things that we're doing, and the things, like I said, run through the communication of our guys, and if they can communicate with each other, we'll be on the same page and we'll be fine.
It's very interesting how they're using the nickelback. The nickelback technically is in the linebacker room, but now they're referring to him clearly as a defensive back. So I think that might evolve a little bit in how they want to approach the nickelback position, more of a hybrid safety linebacker, or go back to what Kansas State's done in the past with the hybrid safety corner that has to be good enough to cover and big enough to hit or strong enough to hit, and we'll see how that pans out. But Jerron McPherson, as we mentioned, has moved into that nickelback spot. Now, one more topic here as we wind up the secondary portion of this Sources podcast. The way K-State is going to attack defenses from the back end of the defense is intriguing because, of course, as K-State fans know, it's been a bend but don't break, very passive, a lot of zone coverage, very soft zone coverage, wanting teams to have to go through a lot to move down the field. No big plays, try to create a turnover, but don't take a lot of chances. Well, Van Malone says that is about to change. His guys are going to be wanting to create turnovers on a regular basis, and that's a topic I find very interesting.
That's one of the things that in different places in my career, we've led the country and we've been in the top 10 in the nation in creating turnovers. So I think it's an attitude. It's continually pushing it, which our coaches do, and our players believing that that's something that they can be good at. And that's, I think that's what we've seen throughout the course of fall camp is our guys going after the football, finding ways to create turnovers, to get the ball back to our offense. So we'll just keep pushing it. We'll continue to drill turnover drills, and we'll get excited when they create turnovers, and there'll be accountabilities when we don't.
Van Malone is a guy who wants to wreak havoc with opposing offenses. What coach doesn't? Nobody really wants to coach the guys that just sit back and let pass completions happen. So he would prefer to get up on the line, be aggressive, make things happen with his cornerbacks. And that would tend to indicate that he wants to play a lot of man coverage, a lot of one-on-one coverage on the outside. He feels like he has the tools to do it. Here's Van Malone.
Well, we're aggressive. We're mostly aggressive because we feel like we have the ability to be aggressive, but you can't do that every play. So there'll be plays and there'll be situations where we're not in a press alignment, but we want to be aggressive. We want to be aggressive 11 times out of 8.
Joe Klanderman, on the other hand, who's a little bit more familiar with what the defensive schemes are through Chris Klieman, knows that there are real benefits to zone, and that prevents you from getting up there too often in press coverage. Here's Joe Klanderman on why they like zone.
Well, just trying to play some more defenses where we have eyes on the football, whether that's, and that's not going to be an exclusive deal, but that's a philosophical thing is we want to play with more eyes on the ball, which maybe equates to some more zone coverage at times. And I think when you get more eyes on the ball, you get more people around the ball. When you get more people around the ball, good things happen.
Well, that's the secondary from Joe Klanderman and Van Malone. Let's move into the defensive line. A very nice group of players there that have greeted Buddy Wyatt at defensive ends and Mike Tuiasosopo at defensive tackles. They've got a lot of really, really good players. And it starts right in the middle with Trey Deshawn. Mike Tuiasosopo likes him an awful lot.
We're counting on him to continue to be a great playmaker. And, he leads us with the way he works on the field. So when we're doing fundamentals, he's the guy that's leading the way. And we couldn't ask for a better leader than Trey Deshawn because the younger guys they're seeing what the model looks like. And, we're very, very fortunate to have him, and along with Joe and Jordan as our leaders, because those guys put their hard hat on every day and they come to work. And I have great appreciation for that.
We'll get to Joe Davies and Jordan Mitty as the guys that are going to man that other spot most often opposite Trey Deshawn. But the question becomes, is Trey Deshawn a defensive tackle, or is he going to be lined up as the nose tackle? Here's Coach Tuiasosopo.
Trey is a very, very smart player. He can do either one. He can do the 3 technique and he can do the nose. And so we're a little bit interchangeable that way. He's got to be able to do both of them that way. But we expect him to be an anchor in the middle. We expect him to be able to hold up against good zone teams, good power teams. We expect great play of him.
Well, Trey Deshawn is certainly the anchor in the middle for Kansas State defensively, but someone will have to start next to him, and that is a real legitimate battle right now in camp between Joe Davies and Jordan Mitty. Who will it be? Here's Coach once again.
Yeah, so far, I would say they're probably even. They understand their roles. Camp ain't over. We're still competing. It'll sort itself out here because at the end of the day, just like I've told them, production is what separates you.
Pretty good trio of senior defensive linemen there in the middle, but that brings a question. What are they going to do for added depth and try to get some guys ready there in the middle for seasons beyond this? Well, there are plenty of players that will line up and play some this season. Let's let Coach Tuiasosopo go through the rest of the gang.
Drew Wiley is doing a wonderful job here in camp. Eli Huggins has made a move. He's had he quite possibly could have had the best camp of the entire room. And then you have a young man like Jalen Pickle who's really coming along. And a lot of it to me is just understanding the play, because I think Coach Wyatt alluded to, man, those are two different animals, the defensive ends and inside tackles. And so Jalen Pickles had a nice camp, and we're relying and counting on him to play.
Well, and that leaves 6 defensive tackles that Coach Tuiasosopo has now listed. That's a long, long list. Typically, you would think of maybe 3 or 4 guys. And he just listed Jalen Pickle as a guy who's going to play, and I would guess that he is the 6th of that group. So that would indicate to me that they plan on rotating a lot of defensive tackles, something I would be a little bit reluctant to see. I want to see Trey Deshawn and Mitty and Davies out there as often as possible. But it's not about quantity to Coach Tuiasosopo. It's about quality. I think you're going to see a lot of defensive tackles awkwardly running on and off the field this season as they switch out personnel during the course of any drive.
They're going to have to play a lot. For a big guy to play 7-8 snaps in a series, that seems like a lot of snaps. So you'd like to be able to get quality. I'm interested in quality, not quantity. And, what good is it for him to play 50 snaps a game if you're only getting 20 quality snaps out of him? So my whole thing is our work is towards quality snaps, playing at a high level, high speed, playing fast, all the above. And that's kind of, to answer your question, maybe it's 30 snaps a game, maybe it's 40 snaps a game, but those guys have got to bring quality snaps.
Of course, Coach there was talking mostly about Trey Deshawn, but that involves everyone and how they'll be used throughout the year at the defensive tackle spot. A very deep position for Kansas State. That's something that Kansas State often has not had at defensive tackle. It's a very difficult position to recruit, but the previous staff did do a good job of stocking it up as the time wore on. That's a position they did a great job with that, and we'll see if all 6 of those guys are indeed going to see meaningful playing time as the season goes on. I would imagine it's going to get whittled down pretty quickly to about 4 guys. Let's move over to the defensive ends now, and of course, Buddy Wyatt loves what he has. Why wouldn't he? He might have the best 2 defensive ends as a combo, as a package in the Big 12, and it all starts with Wyatt Hubert, who has had one heck of a summer and comes in now as a potential dominant force in Big 12 play.
Wyatt he has the total package. I mean, he is very locked in, focused. He practices hard, has a great work ethic. He's got good explosion. He's got good size, good strength, good flexibility. But he's a student of the game as well. So he's really, he's a special player, and not just in his play, but the way he prepares.
What do you see as the ceiling for him as a player here?
Oh, he could be. I mean, they've had some good defensive ends here. He can be right up there with those guys.
Tip of the hat to John Kurtz there from KMAN Radio with the follow-up question. Wyatt Hubert is big time, but he's not alone in defensive end. Of course, he's got Reggie Walker. He's been dinged up a little bit this fall in camp, but he's back on the field doing his thing, and maybe he can become the type of player he showed to be earlier in his career before more was heaped on his shoulders with the loss of Jordan Willis to graduation, and he's now with the Bengals. Maybe having Wyatt Hubert down there will certainly help Reggie Walker. These are 2 really good defensive ends. Here's Coach Buddy Wyatt on Reggie Walker.
I just want Reggie to be the best he can possibly be. If that's to be an all-conference player, that's to be an all-conference player. That can be all-American, that's an all-American. But we're going to take it one day at a time and continue to try to stack one good day on top of another like Coach Klieman talked about. And then at the end, we'll see where he falls. If he's an all-American, that's great for him, and that's great for this program.
They're not alone at defensive end. Luckily, Kyle Ball is rattling around there as the 3rd defensive end, so he'll give them some immediate relief coming in off the bench. And, of course, Bronson Boom Massey is still stalking the sideline and able to come in to make some big plays. Here's Coach Wyatt on the style of his D ends.
We want our guys to be very disruptive. That's the more disruptive we are at the defensive end spot and the defensive line spot, the better we're going to be on defense. So we want our guys to be very disruptive, whether it's in the pass or in the run game. Well, you got to make sure you know what your rush lanes are, and you got to be fundamentally sound as far as your rush lanes go. You got to make sure if I'm a near shoulder rusher, I got to be a near shoulder rusher. If I'm a near foot rusher, I got to be a near foot rusher. So we can keep our lanes intact, so we can't allow the quarterback to escape out the pocket.
Let's bring this full circle now with tying together what Coach Tuiasosopo said about his defensive tackles and Coach Wyatt said about his defensive ends. These guys have to work together. They have to be one. They have to be on the same wavelength throughout the season. And here's Buddy Wyatt on how the two positions complement each other.
It's always good when you have experience along the defensive line. I think those guys have played together a long time. They work very well together. They know each other's weaknesses and strengths. So I do think that they complement one another. And I think, there's certain skill sets inside that our guys have to bring to the table that defensive ends don't have. And there's certain skill sets we have at defensive end that they don't have inside. And we're able to blend those guys together, and then I think we can have something special.
Well, that's the first half of this week's Powercat Sources podcast as we talk to the people that you want to hear from about Kansas State sports, and in this case, Kansas State football. We will be back on the other side of this brief break as we talk to Coach Chris Klieman. Tuesday's press conference beckons. I'm on my way there, and when I get back, we will put together the best of Chris Klieman and my commentary that goes with it. We'll be right back.
The Powercat Podcast continues shortly.
Is your January looking dry? Get some lotion. Get a humidifier. And better yet, get Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices across local stores to get the best price on a huge selection of drinks perfect for dry January. Every single time. Non-alcoholic wines? Have a look. Ready-made mocktails? Grab a straw and order them up. Beer without the alcohol? Yep, take your pick. You can find all of them here, in the app, in that phone that's in your hand. Could it be any simpler? Nope, not a chance. So shop for great deals on all your dry January beverages or other drinks and get them delivered to your door or blanket fort, maybe. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations. And don't forget to lotion up your elbows. They're looking a little dry.
Diets and workouts, you've done the work, so why can't you get to your goal weight? That's because up to 70% of your weight is predetermined by your genetics. So while you've been told that it's all about your willpower, you're actually fighting your biology. Don't do it alone. Found's Doctor Design program uses medication as part of a treatment plan that targets your body's unique biological needs, so that your body works with you and not against you. Take the quiz at joinfound.com to see if Found's weight loss program is right for you.
Back to Fitz of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast, our Sources edition, as we bring in the people you want to hear from. And in the second half of this week's Sources Podcast, we're going to go straight to Chris Klieman's press conference. It happened earlier on Tuesday, and he met with the media and took on a bunch of different topics, but we're going to lock in on a few themes here as we go through Coach Klieman's press conference. First of all, Coach Klieman was asked about the fullback position. Of course, Adam Harder was injured earlier this fall in practice. It's a serious knee injury, and he will be lost for the season. So that means someone else is going to probably have to take over that starting fullback role. And Coach Klieman went on to point out that fullbacks and tight ends are pretty much interchangeable in this system. So that could lead to guys playing multiple positions. And here's what he had to say about that.
Everybody that's a tight end is also a fullback, from Lenners to Logan Long to Blaze to Sammy to Luke Soa. We're throwing Jack Steneen in the mix as well. I mean, there's so many bodies back there that now Coach Mess is just, we have the time. It's unfortunate that Adam was injured, but it's not like it's happened 2 days before a game. So we have a number of guys that will keep rotating through. There's not going to be a set, boy, you're the only thing you are as a tight end, and the only thing you are is a fullback. We have to continue to push the guys and see how much they can absorb and understand to play multiple spots. And so it'll be a revolving door there. But a lot of guys are going to play too.
Then the press conference moved on to the quarterback position. Of course, Skylar Thompson is the starter, but who will be his backup, Nick Ost or John Holcomb? It remains a mystery, and it might remain a mystery for a while.
we're still a ways away, to be honest with you, and that's going to probably continue to be throughout the fall. I've been pleased with Nick at times. I've been pleased with John at times. It's the consistency that they both have to bring to the table, as well as the ability to take care of the football. That's what's going to be determined on who that backup quarterback is, and it's a daily evaluation for us. That's why we're still doing a lot of second and third down against good on good, so to speak, or some 7-on-7 or some team periods, so that we still put those guys in the fire against some of the top line defenders we have, so that we can figure out who we feel most comfortable with, and that'll be ongoing. We're not going to name a backup prior to week 1. It'll be between Coach Mess, Coach Klein, and I as we continue to evaluate on a week-to-week basis.
Very interesting stuff. It could be situational at quarterback. This guy comes in if the game's in this situation. The other guy comes in another situation. We'll see. Hopefully Skylar Thompson can stay healthy, won't have a need for a backup unless the game's a blowout. Now let's move on to another topic that I asked Coach about. We know a lot of freshmen are going to play under this new redshirt rule, in which they can play 4 games or fewer and still maintain their redshirt. Guys did it last year. But will guys in this freshman class play more than 4 games and go ahead and burn that freshman season? Has the staff identified anyone in that position?
We're still working through that. I think some of the freshmen have hit a little bit of a wall. When you're talking, this is the 3rd week of camp. They've probably played more football in 3 weeks of camp than some of them have for the last couple of years, especially the intensity that we're playing with. So we're really pleased with all of them. There's still probably 8 to 12 that could help us somewhere along the line. If none of them play in game 1, does that mean we won't play any of them the rest of the season? Not at all. There's a few that are probably further along than others, just because of what's between the ears and understanding what we're doing offensively and defensively. There's a number of them that have the ability to play right now, but mentally haven't maybe caught up to what we're doing schematically. That we got to understand that they're just freshmen. It's going to take a little bit more time for those guys to really understand what we need them to do offensively and defensively. So I think weekly we'll sit down as a staff and say, here's the guys that we're going to earmark to maybe help us out, whether it's on teams or offense and defense.
Now let's get a little bit deeper than just, X's and O's, positions, depth, those type of things. D. Scott Fritchen and myself kind of tag teamed on a couple topics here. D went earlier in the press conference. I went later, but the themes were very similar, and how you put together a program, how the team is progressing, are they getting it? And we start off here with a question from D. Scott Fritchen about how the team is progressing so far in fall camp.
The guys are excited to go out and compete and play every day. I've been really happy with the effort on a daily basis to come out there and continue to try to improve. They know that they're learning something from our schemes every day. They're learning something from a coach every day on how to do a technique, or it's all new to them. That's the thing that I've enjoyed. It's all new to them, so they're really sponges. They want to continue to improve and get better, and they know that we're barely scratching the surface of what we're doing offensively and defensively, and for us to stay on that trajectory to be where we want to be, we have to continue each day to get better, and they're excited to improve every day.
What are 1 or 2 things specifically that you're most impressed with right now, and what are maybe 1 or 2 biggest concerns right now?
Well, the 1 or 2 biggest concerns are us detailing things every day. I think broad perspective, understanding offense and defensive schemes, I think we're doing a great job, and that's a positive. But we have to continue to detail our work, detail an alignment, an assignment, detail a footwork, a hand placement, whatever it may be. That's where we still have to continue to try to push each other to be better, because once again, I like where we're at, but now it's just detailing, whether it's a specific play, whether it's a technique, in that not just offensively and defensively, but special teams as well. And so we're by no means ready to go, but I like the enthusiasm and how eager the guys are to learn.
In North Dakota State, when you took over, you inherited systems that were in place, a culture that was in place. Here you kind of started from ground zero. How has that been a challenge for you, and how's it progressing?
Well, it's been fun because you're trying to implement what you believe in and what you know, and what you know works into a culture where they've already had success and they've had tremendous leadership from Coach Schneider when he was here. And so it's just flipping the switch and just trying to learn the way we do things. Our staff does things, and I've been fortunate because Scotty was a part of our staff at North Dakota State, and Mess was there. So you got the leaders on each side of the ball that know what we're looking for. When I say we're looking for, all of us as a staff, we're all in this together of what we're looking for from how we do things and how we detail things, not only at practice, but more importantly in the walkthroughs and in the position meetings and in the unit meetings. That's how you're building this culture and building the cohesiveness amongst the units offensively and defensively is those leaders, and I couldn't be more pleased with what Coach Hazelton and Coach Mess are doing to lead their units. And then on top of that, we have such great assistants that have tremendous knowledge, tremendous experience, and Coach Hayes and Coach Mess are so good about saying, okay, I want to know what your guys' input is. I want to have your input and put your stamp on some things, and they're allowing that to happen in those unit meetings. And so it's a daily grind, and and we're continuing to improve on a daily basis. But I'm so pleased with where we're at with the staff and how we've come together and start to continue to build the culture.
Some coaches move into a new program, and you've got to really kind of retrain the culture. You've got all new systems. Maybe your personnel doesn't fit those systems. But you kind of walked in here with similar expectations, similar schemes, although different way of going about it. How's that assisted in this build?
Once again, I don't know all the things that had transpired before. I think offensively, we probably shift trade motion a little bit more than what has been done in the past, but there's some gap scheme, there's some zone scheme, there's some continuity there of things offensively. I think defensively it's a little bit different with the things that Coach Hayes and I both believe in, and the defensive staff, we're more of a Tampa 2 system now, as opposed to what they did in the past. We're in the past it was more quarters based, and now it's more too deep based and more hard corners and stuff, and it's in different blitz packages and things that Coach Hayes and I have done throughout the years and dating back to when we were at North Dakota State. That's different from what these guys did in the past, And so when you're a too high defense, you're a too high defense, and they were a too high before, and we're still a too high now. But it's just different ways of doing things, and then you take that across the landscape of offense, defense, and special teams. The terminology is just so different, and so that's where we have to make sure and understand that what was a term last year could mean the same, but here's what it's called this year, and that's where we're still working through some things. And the guys have done a phenomenal job of learning the terminology and utilizing it so that they're talking Coach Kleinerman's language in the back end of safeties rather than what was in the past, and that's always a work in progress.
And finally, let's wrap up the podcast with one more bit of sound from Chris Klieman. And my friend Tyler Griever over at WIW asked this question. As you walk into the Steel and Pipe Theater, auditorium, whatever they call it, up on the left side as you face the front wall were the 16 goals. They are now replaced by 2 crossed-over pickaxes and the phrase "pound the stone" as Coach Klieman continues to put his mark on this Kansas State football program.
Continuing to build on the great legacy that is Kansas State football. And Kansas State's got a tremendous tradition here, built by Coach Schneider, and we're trying to continue to build upon that legacy. Ben Newman's a guy that we've brought in here a couple of times as a performance coach, motivational speaker that the guys have really enjoyed, and that's one of Ben's mottos of "pound the stone" that the guys have really tapped into, and we'll continue to do that. And we'll continue to find new ways to motivate guys and find new ways to get guys to believe in the new era of Kansas State football.
Well, that's it for this week's Sources podcast, as the Go Powercat team cranks out numerous podcasts throughout the week. Stay tuned for Wednesday when we have our Questions podcast, the traditional original podcasts, and of course on Friday we will have our overtime. And next week, Thursday, brings a pregame podcast because it's that time of year. Kickoff is right around the corner. Are you a subscriber to GoPowercat.com? Well, sign up for an annual subscription today and get 30% off the price of a new subscription. Make sure you're on the Go Powercat team. We're doing things like no one else is doing, and I think it's an awful lot of fun. We'll talk to you real soon with the Powercat Podcast.
Powercat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street Publishing.